1. So I'm a banker, not the Gordon Gekko type, but the other kind. The one where every time you try to describe what you do, people give you a blank stare and try to say something polite. I worked in corporate finance at a large German bank. Speaking English and German was absolutely required. Ideally, you would speak another language as well, as we financed a lot of stuff all over the world. I worked in a mid-office function, so right in between the sales guys with the huge paychecks and the back-office guys who would drop everything at 5 p.m. no matter how important it was. My job back then was to support the sales guys by basically doing their busy work and taking over a deal as soon as it was signed. After a deal has been signed and paid out, you need to monitor it for the whole length of its run, collect documents, reports, balance sheets, and watch out for legal requirements, as well as take part in international meetings and, just generally, be available for everything anyone needs while coordinating all the in-house departments. Basically, I was the first guy you reached when you came in from outside and wanted something to do with the financing in question. We were separated into different product groups, and when I started, my boss sent me to a product which was managed pretty damn badly by a woman in her 50s who still worked as she did during the 1990s. And this was the late 2010s. And a younger guy who worked with the direction of a local public servant, or DMV worker for the Americans. So, the product was basically going to shit, and I was supposed to save it. I worked hard for a few months to reorganize everything, having to suffer my older colleague, who officially was my senior, while not actually knowing anything, and the younger guy who didn't do anything. But I got it sorted. Boss was happy and sent me to another product. Now, Product 1 suffered because of the people, but also because older lady was constantly sick. Product 2 suffered because the woman in question didn't speak English very well and made mistakes. That was an easy fix. I just set up our in-house systems for them, so that they would receive reminders when the contract required it, and those reminders gave them detailed description in German of what they had to do. Boss was even happier. By this point, I did the major work of 2 products, when everyone else on the team had a main product that worked part-time, like 30%, in a secondary product. I did 100% for 2 products, but since everyone worked very slowly, it didn't stress me so much. So a young colleague decided to leave for another department, and someone had to take his place. I was tired of Product 1 anyway, and told my boss that I would take Product 3 together with Product 2, but he would have to have another colleague take over for me in Product 1, since this has been streamlined so much already that it wasn't much work. Boss agrees. If I am always ready to help out, I think you can see where this is heading. Think naive employee believes working a lot will get him praise. A common theme here. I agree as well. I start on Product 3, and pretty soon I'm handling 75% of all deals in that area. I have a part-time colleague who is incredibly slow because she trusts no one's work, not even her own, and spends hours checking and rechecking everything, and a younger colleague who is beloved of my boss's boss's boss because he plays football. Soccer. This is where it starts to go wrong. Younger colleague gets a lot of projects, besides not giving a fuck and not working them properly, and I suddenly realize that I have worked there for years, and no one will give me a project or anything else that would allow me to develop. Even though I do the work of 3 people and I'm still working in Product 1, as my replacement takes no responsibility and shoves everything troublesome my way. I say as much to my boss. Yeah, I know younger me kinda lost out when the brains were handed out. It didn't help that he always gave me 100% on my yearly evaluations, always finding a reason why he couldn't give me more. Mostly it was because it would have been unfair for everyone else, and I wanted to please, so I didn't say anything. Well, I found out that the young football guy routinely got 125% while doing far less than I did. My boss was completely understanding and nice and said something will come. Now I'm constantly angry and depressed, and it's starting to affect my health. Boss tells me to take it slow and to actually call in sick when I am sick. So yeah, I do exactly that. Cue malicious compliance. I have a young child at this stage, and I'm tired and angry and depressed, and get a lot of colds and other illnesses that, looking back, I can only assume had something to do with my mental state. So I get sick about a week or two every quarter. Add to that the 30 days of vacation time and the fact that I had to lose a lot of overtime, and I suddenly wasn't there 24/7 anymore. And it turns out that my colleagues are not only not able to do their own jobs without me constantly supporting them, they are definitely unable to do my job as well, because I had taken on so much responsibility. It became pretty clear that all the so-called seniors, a job I was denied, as someone would have had to leave before I could get it, completely relied on me. No one could get my Excel tables to work. I still don't get why people don't just Google stuff. Excel isn't exactly rocket science, and deadlines were being missed left and right. I kind of hoped that this would cause the bosses to realize how important I was. But instead, all the colleagues complained that I was constantly absent, and I actually came back to a very negative place that hated me, and a boss who wrote, "He abandoned his colleagues," in my performance review. Even though that sort of thing would get thrown out by any HR in Germany. Cue second malicious compliance. I got really angry and told my boss that instead of blaming me, he should see what I actually did for the team, and how it wouldn't even work properly without me. He was polite about it, but basically said they don't need me. I am just one of the guys there. So I quit, and I'm beyond grateful that I did. I now have a job in a local bank 20 minutes from where I live, instead of 1 to 1.5 hours. They actually care about their customers and their employees. Everyone tries to work constructively with everyone else, and when we meet for drinks, it's actually nice and has nothing to do with work. Here no one gives a shit about education or rank, and it's the first time in my life that I don't dread going to work. 2. My local grocery store does cholesterol checks for a small fee once a month, and I wanted to see how I'm doing, so I went. After I was done with the test, I needed to pay at the pharmacy counter, so I got in line behind the one person already in line. While I was waiting, I pulled out my phone to look up what the healthy ranges of each section were to compare my results to. The person in front of me went up to the counter, but it's normal for customers in line to wait about 8 to 10 feet away to give other customers privacy at the pharmacy counter, so I continued waiting and looking at my phone and results. Well, apparently the old guy, 2 people behind me, didn't like that. He walks up to me and rudely gestures at the line on the ground that says, "Please wait here." I look at the line, then look back at him and say, "Okay." Then literally take 1 step forward to be standing at the line. I thought it was weird that 1 step forward was so important to him, but wouldn't have thought that much more about it if it weren't for his next comment. After he got back to his place at the back of the line, he was 3rd in line, it wasn't even that long, he complained to the other person in line about me being a clueless kid too busy staring at his phone to pay attention. I thought about saying something, but it was my turn to go up to the counter, and I shop here frequently, so I didn't want to make a scene, so I let it go. I left the store after I paid and sent a text to my girlfriend before I started driving off. As I started my car, I saw the old guy walking out of the store to his truck, a couple rows over, and that's when inspiration struck. There was one main entrance and exit I suspected he would also use to leave the parking lot, so I timed leaving my row so that he would be right behind me. I saw in my rearview mirror he had someone driving him, and he was in the passenger seat. I drove incredibly slow through the parking lot and gave ample time for pedestrians to cross in front of me, knowing he would be annoyed having to wait longer to leave. As I was about to exit the parking lot, there was a gap in the traffic, so I waited an extra 5 to 10 seconds so that I could turn onto the road, but he would have to wait for the wave of traffic to pass before he could exit the parking lot. I was feeling pretty happy about my petty revenge and thought that it would be the end of it. But as luck would have it, after the wave of traffic passed, he ended up right behind me again in the left turn lane. I turn left at this light often, so I knew it didn't stay green for long, and we might have to wait through another cycle before the light turns green again. As the light turned green, and the traffic started moving, I again drove at a slow pace, and was able to time it so that the light turned yellow as I and the next car turned left. I took a pause and gassed it through the intersection, to make my left turn so that he was stuck at the red light and would have to wait another 4 or 5 minutes for the next green light. As I drove off, I looked back at my rear-view mirror and saw him throw his arms up in frustration, giving me the satisfaction of knowing my PettyRevenge worked. 3. My neighbors are not nice people. To give you an example, they had their leaf bags sitting on their curb, which resulted in other inconsiderate people in the neighborhood putting their bags of dog crap in their leaf bags. I get that it's super annoying, but the neighbor Jacques didn't like it and just dumped the bags of crap onto the street. I didn't see it happen, another neighbor told me after the fact, but it was a windy day, and the next day there were about 50 bags of dog crap blowing on my lawn. My husband and I were annoyed and cleaned up the bags and put them in our own garbage. Jacques emptied his leaf bags again when they filled up. So we tried to make a point and gathered all the bags of dog crap up and put them in his driveway. He promptly put them on the street, even though he knew we were, albeit passively-aggressively, sending a message. When we finally went to his house to talk to he and his wife about it, he responded, "It's not my shit," and shrugged. However, he stopped emptying the bags on the road. Fast forward to a year later, and they get their own puppy. Instead of having the puppy pee on their own lawn, they head out the front door and walk into my lawn. Not on the edge of my lawn. They have an extendable leash, and the dog goes right on up to the middle of ours. They have a huge front lawn, so it's not an issue of space. They just don't want the mess on their lawns. The whole family has obviously discussed this strategy, because Jacques brings the dog over, as does his bitchy wife, and their son does it too. After the dog is done its business, they walk back to their house and go inside. Now, I've caught them multiple times, so I finally put a "please do not walk on grass" sign in my lawn in an effort to politely say stop. It is slowed down, but doesn't stop. But while these are some annoying examples, the one thing that has bugged me the most was what happened about 10 years ago. I received a bouquet of flowers on my birthday from a friend who lives out of town. I didn't get the flowers on my birthday. Instead, 1 week later, the neighbor's cleaning lady came over and rang my bell holding a big bouquet. I could barely see her head through the flowers. At this point, they were all wilted and pretty much dead. I was so upset. The neighbors had been home the entire time and just let them sit there in their house until the cleaning lady brought them over. There was a card that clearly said my name. They were just being assholes. Anyway, the tables have now turned. It has taken over 10 years, but revenge shall be mine. Because about a week ago, a package came in the mail that was delivered to my house. It is for them, the neighbors. I was about to open it when I saw it wasn't for me, and now I'm sitting and looking at it, wondering when I give it back to them. What's inside? I do not know. I hope it's something they've been anxiously waiting for. This is Petty Level 1000, but I can't tell you the high. 4. Back in the 90s, I was a generally unhealthy, no change there, teenager attending secondary school. This is a UK-based story, by the way. For US people, this would be a junior in high school. It was a normal state school, not a boarding school or anything, but it had delusions of being some kind of posh institution. So they had 4 houses named after ex-pupils who had died in the First World War. Kind of like Hogwarts, except not even vaguely magical. Each house had a teacher who ran it. I was unfortunate enough to be put in the house run by one of the PE gym teachers, physical education. The pupils in the other houses were lucky enough to be led by maths, English, and history teachers, who quite rightly didn't give much of a shit about PE. Occasionally, the different houses would have to do extra PE lessons after normal school hours. And as our house was the one lorded over by a PE teacher, we had the joy of being subjected to this far more often than the others. So one rather chilly November afternoon, the members of our house filed out onto the school playing fields, and were told to do 3 full laps before we could go home. Now, these were fairly big fields, so 1 lap was at least 1.5 miles, if not more. Our PE teaching lead of the house stood at the start and finish line and watched us go around, making sure all of us did our laps. By the end of one lap, I was firmly in last place as I jogged, past the teacher. I noticed that the macho dickhead was standing there in shorts and a t-shirt. In November. By the end of my second lap, the athletic kids had finished all 3 and gone home. But there was the teacher still stood there monitoring us slow kids, with his arms crossed, visibly shivering. With about 3/4 of my last lap left to go, I was the only one left out there. By this point, I was fairly sure that Mr. PE teacher couldn't actually punish me for lack of effort. So I slowed down to a walk. Not an especially fast walk, just enough for the movement to keep me warm. When I finally finished the last lap, our esteemed PE teaching head of house looked to be about 2 minutes away from full-blown hypothermia. This didn't stop him from attempting a sarcastic rebuke through his chattering teeth.
Okay, finally finished. I think you could have done that a bit faster, couldn't you?
I just walked past him without stopping, looking at him, and said, "Yeah, I could have." That was the last time anyone was forced to do after-school PE. 5. I am a tax preparer, and we all know about tax season. Usually we have to work 55 to 60 hours a week, which is pretty standard. But this year, the company decided to reduce it to 50 in an attempt to promote better work-life balance. Realistically speaking, there is no way this was going to work out, because outside of my local office, the other offices in the company notoriously struggled to get their tax returns done on time, with a 55 to 60-hour week. They also had increased our yearly charge hour goals, which I thought was pretty counterintuitive. Either way, I decided to say screw it, just do the 50, because I'll take the extra time, sure. That adventure died quickly because my manager just started burying me in projects. For some background on my manager, he sucked at his job. Constantly contradicts himself, throws others under the bus, and hounds you about getting efficient and getting his projects done, but then waits forever to get them reviewed. He also has no problem bossing people around and being condescending, but the moment someone with an ounce of authority pushes down on him, he instantly folds and bends to their will like a dog after its owner tells it to roll, even if they have no idea what they're talking about. So, as I'm working on all these projects he buried me in, I soon realized that 50 is not going to allow me to get all this done. It's definitely not that I was taking too long to do them. I'm confident that my track record at the company shows that I got stuff done and pushed out in a timely manner. But between the budget hours that these projects had as a whole, the 50 hours, and the line of other projects I had from other people, yeah, fat chance I was going to make it. So I decided, screw it, I'll just do 55 to 60 hours because I'm a team player. I did like working at that place. I figured I'd get ahead of the company's lovely charge hour goal. And brownie points couldn't hurt. Then my manager comes into play again. He asks me if I can hop on a call, and that's where it begins. He asks me about my time card, because even though my requirement is 50, I still book the 55 to 60, because I ain't working for free. I find out in that meeting a partner from another office looked at my time card and started questioning it. He then proceeded to start saying all kinds of things about me and accusing me of stuff. I apparently now had a nickname amongst him and that group as the 60-hour man. My manager rips me a new one because I'm working too much, and that I don't have to do that. And yes, I didn't have to, but it was my choice that I was okay with making. I then realized that my manager was also in on the call and listening to this partner say all this stuff about me, but he didn't stick up for me. And knowing damn well how much he put on my plate, seemed to have agreed with this guy who has no idea what's going on. I felt extremely backstabbed by this, but decided, okay, fine, I won't work too much, so went back down to 50 hours again. I'll take the extra time. As a result, he got antsy about some of the projects because they weren't done yet. I couldn't have gotten to them with the 50 hours I had each week, so they'd keep needing to get pushed out. This led to some of the projects not getting done by the tax deadline, so we had to extend, and he wasn't happy about it. He believes that they could have gotten it done, and yeah, they could have, That extra 5 to 10 hours a week I was originally putting in would have allowed me to get them done. All my manager had to do was keep his mouth shut or utter a thank you. I left that company at the end of July and left him with the rest of his projects that he dumped on me through that month. I wished him well, but I hope to never work under him again. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 290. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please boop the like button. And if you'd like to get the videos a little bit early, you can support me through my Patreon, which is linked in the description. For those of you who don't know, I have a Patreon. I've had it for years, but it turns out a lot of people didn't know because I didn't talk about it enough. That's why I've been yammering on about it a lot more. You'll also find linked in the description a link to the Hellfreezer merchandise store, where you can get yourself a nifty little t-shirt or a mug or something like that. And you can make donations during streams and videos like this one on a more one-off basis if you'd like to support the channel through that way. And while you don't have to do that, I do appreciate it, because while my operating costs are not extremely high, there are still costs to running a YouTube channel on a daily basis. And it helps out. Alright, let's see. No other business. I think the next shout-out's October or something. So let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is: what is your current desktop background, if it's safe for work and you're comfortable sharing? Mine is actually, some of you might have seen it pop up occasionally on streams. It's the cover of a graphic novel called Anno Dracula, 1895, 7 Days in Mayhem. This is, I think it's in continuity. It's part of a series of novels, which aren't comics, written by Kim Newman. And it slots into, it's kind of like backstory for one of the characters called Kate Reed. Long story short, Kate Reed was a character that was originally meant to be in the Dracula novel. She was edited out of it, and the Anno Dracula stories, they kind of borrow and repurpose characters from other stories and use them in there. Some quite literally taken because they're in public domain. Others sort of thinly veiled allegories, but very obvious. I mean, if I tell you the character is called Hamish Bond in one of the novels, I'm sure you can work out exactly who he's based on. One of my favorite book series. I have the audiobooks, I have the physical books. I think I've got ebooks for some of them. If there's any other versions, I'll do that as well. I've literally been waiting years for an audiobook version of the last book, because I literally haven't had time to sit down and read the physical book. I've read maybe a chapter, and that's just having a time to do like a page or two now and again. But yeah, so that's currently what my desktop is. That was a long way to say that. So why don't you let me know what yours are in a comment below. And with that, I'm going to head off for now and record more stories. It's a very busy recording day for me. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.